Okay, I'm back again for another stream. And I thought I'd continue where I left off last time. When I say continue, I'm talking about this story that I'm working on, Isekai story, and writing it, and in parallel reading through the first draft of what I have written. And as I noted last time, yesterday I think it was, I have come to a point where I have to think a little bit about what I'm going to do next, and that means that I'm able to try to catch up to the point that I have reached in the story, and try to read through as much of what I have written as I can, and it's probably 1 or 2 sessions left before I am at the point where I am. And last time we read through the part where the protagonist and his 2 new companions travel back to the village where they first met, and they are going to meet this Vaughn seller that they had some business with the first time, and I think this is the point I got to last time, if I didn't recall correctly. Yes, I think this is the bit I came to. So let's get started, shall we? So, start from the last bit I read last time. Anyway, we don't have time for philosophical discussions on the nature of magic. We need a plan for this evening's meeting. So let's go through what we know. Both me and Illyret looked at Onyx, nodding. Someone is producing wands in high numbers, mass-producing them and selling them in several countries on this continent. They are selling in bulk, and potential buyers of large numbers of wands, such as kingdoms or nobles with personal armies, are being contacted by sellers. At least this is what it seems like based on what we could piece together from rumors. The sellers appear to be unwilling to say where the wands come from, but there are rumors that they come from Belrock, the mage-led country at the southern part of the continent and recently achieved independence. The wand seller Illyret talked to also seemed to hint at this being the origin. Belrock being the source could be possible. We have no firm knowledge, but the rumors that have come out of the country was that artifacts from the originally independent country's past were found during an excavation of old ruins. This discovery led to the mages that once ran the country trying to regain their lost magical power, demand independence, and when it was not granted, forced their way to independence. After this, they have made leaps and bounds in magical knowledge and power. The descendants of one of the once ruling families was involved in finding the relics and is now the leader. Not the leader, but now the leader. If the rumors about the country are true, then it seems plausible that wands could have been produced in that country. Another alternative is that Belrock is not involved, but that the wands instead come from, for example, the Demon Kingdom. That associates of the wand seller appear to be speaking demon hinted at this. A third option is that the wands come from Belrock, but Belrock is merely a pawn for a third party. We also know that the wands appear to have a deliberate flaw. The wand sellers seem to be aware of this flaw existing. This could be consistent with the theory that this could be a plan to weaken the countries on the continent for subjugation. So, what do we do from here? thinking out loud, I said, well, they appear to be aware of the problems with the wands, but we do not know why there are flaws in the wands. Were they deliberately introduced? Are the problems in the production process that has a certain amount of failures, and these sales are the way of getting rid of the flawed wands? Or is there fundamental flaw in the design that they use, so that this is the best they can do? I continued, if the latter is the case, this can mean that there is no genuine ill intent here. They are simply making the best wands that they can and selling them. Not properly informing the customers of the limits these wands have would be the extent of the unethical behavior. But I assume one can always argue that there will always be a limit. Nothing is perfect, even if it's magical. Especially if it's magical, Onyx commented. So, what would that tell us? I obviously do not have the full picture of what is going on, but I assume that if there is some sort of plot against the conquerors on this continent, either by the Demon Lord or someone else, you would like to uncover this plot, I said, looking at them. They both nodded, so I continued. If there's no plot, that will be impossible to prove, but it would still be valuable to know any information that will make it less likely to be something going on. They both looked a little doubtful, but Onyx said, I suppose, so what would you propose? I'm thinking that we can be quite certain that it was the two associates of the wand seller that used the magic that burnt down the broken trumpet. So maybe they used wands to do this. If so, did they use the same type of wand as they are selling? A completely different design, the same design without the flaws? Knowing more about the wands they use could potentially tell us a lot more, I suggested. Ilrith and Onyx looked at each other, looking at least slightly impressed. Okay, I see where you are going with this, Ilrith said. I continued. So the question is there any way to determine this? Onyx, deliberately smiling cruelly, opened the palm, fire blossoming above it. I can think of several. No, Ilrith pleaded with Onyx. There must be a better way. I felt like I was watching two good friends play acting a routine they had done many times before. If there was only some way for you to study the wands they are using in the same way you had a look at the wands they were selling, Ilrith said. Isn't there some kind of magic that can be used, like time stop to stop time? Onyx looked at me funnily, head cocked to the side. Stopping time? What would that achieve? When time starts again, nothing will have changed. I meant stopping time for everyone but us. In that way, we could take out the wands, examine them, return the wands, and then time continues. They would not know that anything happened, I explained. Onyx shook her head. No, I don't see how that could work. Even if you found a way to stop time, make it only stop for some of those in the room. And especially making it so that it would only stop for those, some of those in the room. And before you start time, how could you put everything back in the same place? Wands shifting position in their pockets a little, touching the wands, potentially triggering a trap. The wands having been touched by a different person than the main user, too many problems. And how would you get back to the exact point you stood when time stopped? Most likely it would have been a slightly different place, body position slightly different, so that when time returned, they would see that you suddenly shifted position. There is also the possibility that the room has some kind of magic defense, not to mention that we don't know of the magic power or skill level of the wand seller, or the two associates. Too risky. I guess that rules out trying to study the wands while they are sleeping or something like that, I said, disappointed. Onyx answered, that's right, I don't see how that could work. They would likely be completely incompetent and would need to be they would have to be completely incompetent, and we would need to be extremely lucky. So it's back to plan B. Again, a roaring flame above her open palm, the flight of fire glinting off her eyes, mouth grinning evilly. No, Onyx, you mustn't! Ilrith grabbed her other shoulder, pleading desperately. Extinguishing the flame, grin replaced by nonchalance, Onyx looked at me. If I can give you an opportunity to see the wand they are using, and one of the wands they are selling right next to each other. Would that be enough for you to be able to see what you need to see? Not used to the interaction between the two, I said somewhat defensively. I suppose. Okay, I will give you that opportunity, but you will need to be quick. You will only have a few short moments. So congratulations, you get to go with Ilrith to the wand seller, and this time you will not need to sneak after her to do so. So keep your wizard outfit on, it will be an important part of our plan. She grinned widely and genuinely. It was the first time I had seen her actually smile, and it was at that moment I realized how cute she actually was. It was early evening, a couple of hours later. The sun had gone down and we were outside the wand seller's warehouse. The building had not moved, so no need to meet at a Drunken Trumpet or a similar place that was still standing this time. I was dressed in my wizard outfit, while Ilrith and Onyx were wearing their uniforms. But we all three wore cloaks that at least made us a little less conspicuous when we were walking. One of the two associates of the wand seller approached us when we were getting close to the warehouse. He had obviously been waiting for our arrival. Lifting up his lamp to see our faces, he briefly looked in my direction, but even though he obviously already was alert and on guard, he visibly froze for a moment upon seeing Onyx grinning up at him. Under her cloak, her uniform was clearly visible, so there was probably no room for mistake. So this was the kind of reaction the two had expected of me after changing when they first had confronted me in the tower. Instead of being terrified, I had probably been smiling stupidly. Oh well. He gained control over himself again, bowed quickly, and mumbling something invited them to walk in the direction of the warehouse, him leading the way. We reached the warehouse and the door to the building opened, the other associate standing in the door. Upon seeing Onyx with Ilrith, he also had a moment of panic, appearing to start reaching for something before he caught himself. He bowed and held the door open. We went in, and the other associate following after us last. The door was closed behind us. Both Onyx and Ilrith threw back their cloaks upon entering, so I did the same. The floppy hat had been a little difficult to wear outside while still remaining inconspicuous, so I retrieved it from inside my cloak and put it on, looking around the room. It was the same warehouse as I had woken in after having been magically put to sleep or made unconscious during my attempt to follow Ilrith and the two men. 3 wooden crates were standing conveniently close to the door. They looked well made, sturdy, and did not have any obvious markings of writing that I could see. The wooden shelves that had been here last time were still here, but there were no wands placed on them for display. I quickly looked over the other crates in the room. There did not appear to be any notable change. Had these crates been brought here from somewhere else? Ah, hello again. The wand seller had gotten up from a desk a little further into the warehouse and approached us. Princess Ilrith, it brings me great joy to be so privileged as to get to meet you again when our last meeting was so recent. And if I am not mistaken, he looked at Onyx. Princess Onyx, I do not believe we have met, but I am honored to be able to make your acquaintance. Maybe I can interest also you in some wands once my business with Ilrith is concluded. While his 2 associates were standing on opposite sides of us, clearly highly alert and concerned, the wand seller did not show any signs of surprise or concern. Maybe he was better at hiding his thoughts, or maybe his work involved frequent interaction with the royals and nobility, or individuals with power in the form of magic, so we didn't have any fearful reaction to having Onyx unexpectedly show up. Maybe there was some other reason. Finally he looked at me. Ah, the gentleman from this morning. I believe we met in relation to that unfortunate affair at what was called the Broken Trumpet. What a delight to be able to meet you again. Perhaps also you are interested in purchasing some wands from this humble seller of wands. As we did not get to be properly introduced, I am Velor Brightfist, purveyor of fine wands. Clearing my throat and attempting to channel the best of magicians of earth fiction, I spoke thus. Well met, my fine man. I am assembled wielder of the chalice, the rod of truth, and Yes, yes, yes. Onyx interrupted me, waving her hand in my direction. We don't have all day. You two can become friends at any time. Let's do some business, shall we? As you say. Velor bowed slightly, then turned to Ilrith. Princess Ilrith, if you please. She nodded, smiling brightly. He walked to the 3 wooden crates and indicated them with his hand. And addressing Ilrith again, please find your order of 100 of our finest wands in these 3 crates, he bowed. Each wand has been packed in a wooden carrying case based to ensure safe handling of the wands when they are given to those that will be using them, and also to prevent any unfortunate magical interaction between the wands during transport and storage, should they be packed in too close proximity to each other. He approached the middle crate and opened the top of the crate. Princess, please inspect the goods to confirm that they meet with your satisfaction upon delivery. Inside the crates are many smaller rectangular wooden boxes. What I assumed were wand carrying cases. They were obviously well made of polished wood, but without any unnecessary ornaments or engravings. The wands were well packed. The size of the crates obviously made perfectly fit the wands and the straws that were used to protect them from shocks. Physical shocks, I guess. Ilrith looked into the crate and happily clapped her hands in front of her face. Oh, they look very nice. What nice cases. Smiling, the wand seller took out one of the cases, opened and placed it on top of the crate, inviting her to take a closer look. The wand looked exactly like the ones we had seen on our last visit. A simple ivory handle with a finely polished piece of wood attached to it. Ilrith was about to bend closer for a better look when Onyx interrupted the very harmonious conversation. Mind if I take a look, Ilrith? Onyx looked at Ilrith. Ilrith looked a little surprised, but took a step back and let Onyx get closer. Onyx bent over the crate, looking down at the wand with a skeptical expression. She also sounded very skeptical. Appearing to be a little taken off guard, the wand seller looked a little surprised, the smile on his face looking a little bit more forced. Grabbing hold of both of the left and right edge of the crate with her hands, she supported herself while she moved her head closer, studying the wand in detail. Some of this might have been an act, but Onyx was obviously studying the wand quite closely. She said again, then leaned back and letting go of the sides of the crate, she snapped up the wand with her hand. Holding it up with 2 fingers before her face, she looked closely at it, looking very obviously not convinced about the usefulness of the wand. Both the wand sellers' associates reacted visibly to Onyx snapping up the wand, both of them starting to reach for something, but stopping before actually doing so. Remaining highly alert, they continued to keep her in their sight. Ilrith looked at the wand seller, laughing smilingly behind her hand. You have to excuse her, she always gets so excited about magic. The wand seller smiled gracefully. Oh, no apology necessary. Nothing would make me more happy than a potential customer showing enthusiasm for my wands. Ilrith smiled brilliantly back at him, then turned a bit more serious for a moment. There actually was one thing. As you say, I should probably inspect the products, but I know so little about magic, and Princess Onyx is such a devoted student of magic, so it's at times difficult to know how to apply her opinions on matters of magic in practical terms. The wand seller nodded understandingly. Again smiling brightly, Ilrith continued, this time gesturing towards me. That's why I was so happy to run into this gentleman at the inn this morning. Turns out that he is a traveling wizard from some faraway land, and his specialty is magic that finds out things about other things. At least that is how I understood the explanation I got. The wand seller looked sideways in my direction, face blank. Ilrith continued, I would feel bad if you were concerned that because I did not properly inspect the wands, I would at a later date come back and complain that the goods are faulty. However, if a first-rate wizard like him finds them to be in accordance with the specification, I am convinced that any problem I at a later date would have with the wands were a result of my improper use or handling, and not due to any fault with the product at the time of delivery. The wand seller turned a little, fully facing me. A short moment passed, him looking at me without any easily readable expression. Then looking back at Ilrith, he smiled gracefully, bowing slightly. But of course, I have no objection. Not only am I fully confident in my own product, and in that there will be no actual flaws found by any inspection, I am also happy that you have found a way that will put your heart fully at ease. After a short pause, glancing in my way, he continued, and I must admit that I am curious to see the powers of this first-rate wizard, as you say, with my own eyes. I almost had the pleasure this morning, but alas, fate intervened before he had opportunity to aid in the recovery efforts. Ilrith nodded happily, and they both looked at me expectantly. I cleared my throat, adjusted my hat, gripped my wizard staff a little tighter, mentally preparing for the task at hand. The two associates of the wand seller also changed their focus to me, Onyx temporarily forgotten. Yes, I started. I see. Wands, you say? I nodded, in what I hoped was a wise-looking, contemplative manner. Moving to stand in front of the two crates, I looked down at them. I said, seemingly deep in thought. I shall assess now the wands here before me. Their power and the type of magic is trivially identifiable, not worthy of my time. What I will assess using the power of the assembled school of clear-sight vision is the standard deviation of the power in the wands. Be they of high quality, there should be little or no variance, while a low-quality product made with insufficient quality control will be highly variable power, with each wand having unique faults and limitations introduced randomly during production. Both Ilrith and Vela looked somewhat confused, like they were not really quite following what I was saying. I begin, I said, dramatically extending my arms to the side, the staff in the right hand. Trusting that Onyx would know when to act, I started the incantations. And as with my second performance before Ilrith and Onyx at the inn, I began reciting what was appropriately enough a C-code function for calculating the standard deviation of an array of numbers. I started thinking about the problem seriously, like I would if I was designing the code for a work task. First of all, an array of numbers, should they be floats or ints? Well, the first seems most appropriate, since magic and magic power seem very much like something that would be read by an analog sensor, assuming such a thing would have been possible, and then input into the computer for processing. I started out with the function definition, int, standard dev, float, strength, size t, and memb. I could feel myself getting into it, punctuating the code with appropriate swings of the staff and my hands. Out of the corner of my eyes, I could see Ilrith looking alert. The wand seller, on the other hand, seemed to be unsure what to think. Eyes wide, he looked intently at me. I also appeared to have the full concentration of the two associates. Letting go of these concerns, I fully concentrated on the code, trying to regain the mental state I had had earlier, when I observed the magic of Onyx's silence spell. As if a switch had been switched, I suddenly felt my awareness change. It again felt like time was slowing down. I turned a little bit towards the side to better be able to see Onyx. No longer being the center of the two associates' attention, she had slowly moved closer to one of them. The one now standing towards the back of the room on the other side of the boxes. Now almost in the center of my vision. I can see her standing intently at me. Our eyes briefly met, and then everything happened at once. I didn't know what Onyx had planned, but I knew something would happen. I mentally removed any interest of what it would be from my mind. The only thing that existed was Onyx and the man next to her. I held that focus foremost in her mind, everything else falling away. Something burst from the crate in front of me, flying up towards the ceiling. I willed myself to ignore it, letting the sensation of the creature and its existence pass through me without leaving any impression. I only saw it briefly as it passed straight in front of my eyes. It seemed like a humanoid creature with white feathered wings, but apart from that I saw little and remember even less. The henchman I was focusing on the other hand, clearly knew this creature and feared it. He drew out his wand. Clearly he had already had it ready to use and pointed it at the creature. Next to him, Onyx mimicked the movement, drawing the wand she had taken from the crate and pointing it at the creature. As he started activating magic using the wand, She did the same, clearly reading what he was doing. I deepened my focus. The wand in the Associate's hand, the wand in Onyx's hand, time slowed even further. Their movements in slow motion. Some kind of energy or fire was coming out of both wands. I ignored this, focusing on the wands, pulling them closer mentally. I recalled what I had seen when I studied the wand the first time, the glow of the magical energy. I visualized this around the wands. It would be strongest around the tip. There, like a switch had been switched, the energy was visible. Time slowed even slower. Keeping my focus on both wands, I saw how the light glowed around the tip of each wand. This appeared similar on both wands, a bright glow at the tip of the wand, but much brighter now compared to when I had studied the wands on the display case. The light from the energy extended in a ball around the top, much further than it had when the wand was not in use. Did it glow because the energy was activated, or did it pull in energy from the surrounding area, making the increased concentration of energy what made it glow? Looking down the stick part of the wand, the effect now was different from when it had been inactive. At that point, there had been a symmetric and gradual fall-off in the brightness of the light the further from the top of the wand one looked. Now there was clearly two different parts, the tip with the magical energy emanating from it, or contained in it, and the wood of the wand between the tip of the wand and the hand, the point where it was attached to the handle. Now this portion looked like a separate portion, almost like a light bulb, light glowing from the center of the light bulb, and bright wires glowing from heat. The wand reminded me of the glowing wires in our light bulb, clearly distinct from the light coming from the light bulb itself. I do not know the purpose of this effect, but it was clearly there and identical on both wands. The difference was in what happened at the point where the handle met the wand. Here the similarities ended. There also seemed to be some physical difference between the two wands, with the wand used by the Associate having a third part, one that was not present in the wand held by Onyx. It looked like a ring of wood attached to the handle, but extending out to run around the last part of the wand, at the point of attachment to the handle. On the wand held by the Associate, this ring was also glowing. The movement was quite slow, but studying how the magic appeared to be moving in the wand, it flowed from the tip down the wand, streaming out of the connection point of the wand and the handle, and then going into the piece of wood that was missing from the other wand. There was not that much energy flowing this way compared to the glow, but it was still significant. There appeared to be no energy leaking, seemingly due to the additional part of the wand catching the energy. The wand held by Onyx also had a flow of energy going down the wand towards the user. When I the day before observed the wands lying on the display case, the leak in magic had hardly been visible. It was only when I studied it carefully that I managed to see it. Now there was no such difficulty. There was an easily visible flow of magic streaming out of the wand at the point where the wood met the handle. Compared to the total amount of magic flowing into the tip, the leak was not big, but there was still a lot of magic leaking out, and that was not the only problem. The magic flowing down the wood appeared to leak into the handle where the user was holding the wand. I was seeing the wand held by Onyx having two main concentrations of magic, in the top, where most of the magic was centered, and in the joint between the handle and the wood. Here there was a second concentration, and it was on this that the magic was leaking. Speculating, it struck me that the leak perhaps was a deliberate design choice to compensate for the amount of magic that was concentrated in the joint. The design in the wand wielded by the Associate appeared to solve this problem by having an additional component that absorbed the magic, so that the main points of the concentrated magic was in the top and the right ring encircling the handle. Since this element was not present in the wand design used on the wand wielded by Onyx, a deliberate leak was introduced to avoid too much magic gathering in an uncontrolled way near the joint. Onyx had said that the wand she had tested had exploded under hard use. Perhaps this was what happened when too much magical energy accumulated for the leak to drain away. This at least made sense. Studying the wand Onyx wielded, I noticed that compared to when my magical ability had activated at the inn, she did not appear to have the same Christmas tree-like variety of different magical effects. Had she removed some items or magical effects before entering the warehouse? Looking at her face, she looked like she was having the time of her life. Grinning widely, she looked magical, and not in the sense that she was filled with magic. As if a had been switched, time resumed its normal movement. I had perhaps been too distracted. The magic from Onyx and the associate next to her slammed into the creature floating above me. Or rather, it went right through it, slamming into the ceiling, causing it to be blown away. A similar blast of magic came from behind me, likely from the other associate. The wand seller had not reacted in any significant way, apart from his eyes widening in surprise. Seeing the explosion in the roof, his mask fell back in place, and he calmly raised his hands and snapped his fingers. In a blink, all magic in the room stopped working. The floating creature disappeared. The wands used by the associates and Onyx stopped emitting magic. He returned his gaze to me, not looking amused. Care to explain what all this was about? Well, thinking fast, I answered, trying to return to my wizard persona. What you have been seeing is assembled clear-sight divination magic. You cast your questions into the eternal ether to find an entity that can want to answer. I question a standard, please, O entity of the void, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-benevolent. We beseech thee to share your pearls of wisdom. Please state what the standard deviation of the magical powers the wands in these 3 boxes are. It seemed like we created a connection to an entity that answered. It manifested before us, but everything stopped for some reason. Ilrith hastened up to the wand seller, grabbing his hands apologetically. I am so sorry. He seemed very trustworthy when I met him at the inn, but it looks like you now have a big hole in the roof. Please send me the bill for the repairs. This would not have happened if I had used a more normal magician. The wand seller slid back into his professional routine. Paid no mind. What is a little hole or 2 in the ceiling? Simply the cost of doing business. Onyx, also joining them, added, Yes, Ilrith, didn't feel too bad. I got the opportunity to try one of the wands now, and they look fine. Still, Ilrith would not give up so fast, so there was some back and forth for a couple of minutes, ending up with some kind of compromise. I did not follow the details, but it seemed like a commitment to some additional purchases. We left shortly thereafter, the wand seller and one of his associates seeing us off while the other was looking up at the damaged ceiling. We had to return to the inn. And that's perhaps a good place to end it. So, they got to meet the wand seller again. And we can see that the protagonist is getting a little better in using his magical abilities. And we also see that there was actually some difference in the wands that were used by the wand seller and or rather his associates and the ones that they were selling. And the next part of the story is the last I have written so far, and it's basically the trio returning to the inn and having a going through what they have observed. And I will probably go through that next time. But I guess for today that is end it. Maybe I'll be able to write a little bit more before next time. We will see. But for now, I think I'll say that was it. And thank you for listening, watching, and goodbye.